This week on Quality Digest Live, we review the 6 signs of an effective document control system.
Plus epistemology at the Gemba. Did I say that right?
You did. You were perfect.
Epistemology
Perfect.
at the Gemba. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for November 3rd, 2017. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
That's right, and I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. So, some of you who can remember back to the 50s and 60s, you'll recall that made in Japan was kind of synonymous with cheap and most likely.
Do you remember that the Japanese started a town called Usa?
Well, I don't know sure if that's really true.
I think that's true.
That might be an urban legend.
I don't know. I thought that was true, but maybe it's
Usa.
an urban legend.
Well, so you get the idea. Everybody thought that, Japanese products were cheap. But of course, as we all know, by the late 70s and 80s, made in Japan took on a completely different meaning. Made in Japan meant affordable and high quality.
Very high quality.
Well, according to an article by the Xinhua General News Service that appeared in on the ASQ website, a series of high-profile quality failures may be sullying that image, and the Japanese are worried about it. So think about it. First of all, you had Japan's third largest steel maker, Kobe Steel, admitted that some of its aluminum and copper products were subjected to falsified data, and that is material that went all over the world. Nissan Motor Company recently reported that it will recall more than 1.2 million vehicles which underwent flawed safety inspections. And of course, as we all know, long-running story, Takata Corporation pleaded guilty to misleading automakers about the safety of its airbags. Now, according to Japanese analysts, the problem for all this is related to poor governance. So even though Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been promoting the virtues of corporate governance in Japan since he retook office in 2012, analysts say that the focus was merely on boosting profitability and investment while ignoring the governance structure of corporation. Of course, this put pressure on corporations to produce profits, which let cheating and other misconduct kind of go unpunished. So according to Jin Zhenmin, a senior fellow at Fujitsu's Research Institute in Tokyo, the corporate government's mode in Japan is defective in supervision and lacks checks and balances. Without an efficient supervision mechanism and under huge pressure to make a profit among fierce competition, enterprises could easily turn to cheating, and such misconduct is hard to uncover at an early stage. So analysts point out that such a cheating culture, if it were to be, if it were to spread further, would severely damage the competitiveness of Japan's overall manufacturing industry, as well as Japan's reputation as a country. So they're taking this very seriously because it took them a long time to build up to that idea of Japanese products. I mean, they're affordable and they're very high quality, and now this has been threatened by 3 actually huge incidences over the last. Takata started a couple years ago, but Kobe Steel just being the most recent
one. Yeah, and I mean these are major things here. I mean this was a 1.2 million vehicle recall, I believe, from Nissan. Nissan. I mean, these are big things. I mean, that's a lot of money. Obviously, a recall of that many vehicles is an enormous expense for the company. But the reputational hit is really even more than the money.
And not just to the company, but Japan is worried to the reputational hit on the country's products as a whole. So serious deal.
Yeah, serious deal. No doubt about it. All right. Well, for our next news item, we turn to the role that standards play in supporting macroeconomics, specifically as applies to the Group of 7, the G7. Now, the Group of 7 consists of the nations with the world's most advanced economies. That's specifically of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Together, these 7 nations account for $263 trillion in net global wealth. And economics doesn't get much more macro than that, Dirk. We talk about macroeconomics, I thought about this. I mean, Bill Gates is worth, I think, like 500 billion.
Yeah.
So that's like, is that like 1/10 of 1% of the world? I mean, yeah, it's like 2/10 of the world's wealth, or is in Bill Gates' hands. That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty impressive, yeah.
It's like a nation unto himself. Well, anyway, at their meeting in Torino, and Bill Gates wasn't there, I don't think, in September, the G7 drafted a declaration intended to promote international cooperation through the use of standards. Specifically, this declaration seeks to support economic growth, innovation, productivity, competitiveness, interoperability, that's a big one, trust and security in the use of information and communications technology. So specifically to that sector of technology. The declaration is titled, Making the Next Production Revolution Inclusive, Open, and Secure. And by the way, this piece appeared in ANSI. Initially, ANSI published this, so we picked it up. And by next production revolution, the framers of this declaration are talking specifically about what's otherwise known as Industry 4.0, or the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And that's the nexus of artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, big data, additive manufacturing, and molecular edge and cloud computing. All the pieces, and really those are just a few of them, that really are leading us towards a great leap forward in how stuff gets made by the most technologically advanced economies on Earth. The declaration by the G7 states that standardization is the key to engagement from the widest possible group of stakeholders within information and communication technologies is really important because this is really the greatest area of innovation for that next production revolution. In particular, the contribution of small and medium enterprises are called out as critical within the declaration, and the reliance on standards is intended to really give everyone with good ideas a seat at the table. And at a basic level, technological standardization also helps ensure the kind of interoperability, that's why I called that out earlier, that allows information and communications technologies to actually function and engage with one another. So taken together, there's a lot of good reasons for the G7 to call out the role of standards in helping foster the kind of environment of innovation that's going to be so critical to this next production revolution, as they call it. Really good stuff there. I mean, that's the G7 is of course, again, I made a little joke there, but you know, that represents really the major part of the world economy, these advanced technologies, these advanced economies, and really they're keeping their eye on this within that communications and information technology.
Yeah, they have to. Without standards, as the world becomes more and more globalized, which it has already, I mean, if without standards, you're kind of
well, again, especially within communications and IT, really important stuff.
Yep. Well, speaking of computerized stuff, computerized document control systems have been around a long time. Almost any company of at least medium to large has some sort of automated system, sort of document management system to keep track of, you know, what, bills and materials, CAD drawings, processes and procedures, and to track revision levels and signatures. Most of them use some sort of software-based document control system. Some are like local client-server apps, some are cloud-based, but they do the same thing. They maintain order and accountability with the documentation that pertains to your company and its products. Now, when we look at software QMS systems, we see something that looks strikingly, to the novice anyway, to me, like a document management system. So what's the difference between the two? So to answer that question, we have Tim Lozier, Director of Product Strategy for Verse Solutions and author of the article 6 Signs Your Document Control System is Effective. Hi, Tim.
Hey guys, how are you?
All right. So when we talk about software-based QMSs, and obviously a company you work for makes those, no big surprise there, aren't we really in essence talking about a document management system, one that's tailored probably to quality issues perhaps, but it's a document management system just the same. So, and most document management systems that people might have in-house have things like signature routing and other automation. So why wouldn't or couldn't a company just repurpose their in-house document management system to handle the same functions as a software QMS?
Well, I mean, you know, I think when you start to really look at it, you know, the quality function within a company is going to want to have a certain level of control beyond just a document management system in terms of managing records. And if you think about it, the whole concept of what we're doing in quality is to exert a level of control that affects product quality. It affects how we put products out, how we improve and change. So, when you start to really look at the concept of how do you control in a more defined fashion, you want to have the right workflow, the right approvals. You want to be able to have a system that's designed to not just be a check-in, check-out system. You want literally the deepest level of control and deepest level of access. So when you start to really look at the idea of quality management and document management combining, there's a certain level of uniqueness that I think you can get from a QMS building into document control. We're going to talk about a lot of these things in our webinar, but what I see as the benefit is not only just the idea of controlling your documents and having the review and the approval cycles and the change management, so when you're revisioning it, but also think about training. A document's only as good as the people who are trained on it. So how are you actually taking documents and procedures and work instructions and all these different document types, and how are you exerting that into the people within your organization? How is a released document going to get trained on properly, and how do you know that the person has been trained on it? So there's a lot of things that you can connect to the quality function around document management that truly can't be done necessarily in a traditional document management system, but needs that level of control that only document control can offer.
And Tim, a lot of these systems are still, for many companies, are still really paper-based systems, really. I mean, ISO 9001 2015, we know really kind of got rid of the idea of the quality manual to a certain extent. So there's really not this idea that you need to have this binder on the shelf anymore that is your quality management system so much. But I mean, virtually you still need to have those systems, and you need to be able to update them, and you need to be able to share them. Not only with yourself, but with your suppliers as well, and people that are extraneous or outside of maybe your four walls. So, how has this whole thing really morphed from the old paper-based systems to this system now, this cloud-based systems where everybody can access it in real time?
Well, it's funny you say that because, we've done a lot of studies in trying to understand what people are doing with their document management and document control, and a lot of them are still fighting that battle of, where are my documents and how do I get them out? The file systems, spreadsheets, binders, all these different things. So the benefit of having a automated system or even just a centralized system is that you have one place, one single source for the truth. And that's where I think we really need to start shifting our thought process, that you're not just interacting with one person in the company. The new ISO standards try and create a more culture of quality across multiple different departments and operational areas, as well as suppliers or external stakeholders, external parties. So being able to have that centralized area that people can go into, it pushes the information out, it keeps it read-only, it allows them to train on it. Having that one place, one single source of the truth that everybody can go into and consume really opens that scope to what document control was once just quality records or records that you need to manage, to a truly controlled system for all documentation, all processes that everybody in the organization, including people outside your four walls, can consume.
And Tim, when in your article you mentioned 6 things that you should be looking for in a good a software QMS system. Can you just highlight one of those? What do you feel is the most important aspect of a software QMS?
Well, actually, since I wrote the article, I came up with another one. So come Tuesday, there might be 6.5. So, but that being said, one of the things I think is most powerful in general, and it's hard to just say one is better than the others, but it's certainly the link between document control and training. And I think that is where a lot of companies tend to say, okay, we created these procedures and we have them and they're in our system and we expect everybody will be using those going forward. But I think what the ability of having training records and associating training to approved documents is extremely powerful, because you can actually configure a workflow, or you can create a process where a document isn't finalized. It hasn't been released until people are trained on it. So I think that really lends itself to the people and process kind of connectivity that you need, because releasing a document without having the proper training on it can be meaningless, because if nobody's following the procedure that you created, then is it really finalized? So that's just one of the areas. I mean, I think there's a lot of other aspects in terms of, being able to have the right revisions and being able to have workflow to match all different document types. But if I had to pick out one, it would be definitely that training link between people and process, along with technology as the driver to help with that.
Okay, well, as you've mentioned a couple times, we do have a webinar coming up on this very topic. So if you're interested in learning more about this topic, we and Verse Solutions are joining forces to present a webinar called Building Effective Document Control in an ISO 9001 2015 Quality Management System. The webinar happens next week on Tuesday, November 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern. 11 a.m. Pacific. Tim here will be the presenter and I'll be the host, so keep an eye on your email inbox for an invitation to register. There's also a link to the registration form in Tim's article, and also at the bottom on this page, the player page down here, there's a link out to go out to the registration page. So Tim, thanks for joining us this morning, and I guess we'll see you next Tuesday.
All right, guys, it's been fun. Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks, Tim. Have a good weekend.
All right.
Yeah, it's going to be a good webinar. A lot of you have registered for that already, so get on and register quickly. You'll get one last email invitation in your inbox on Monday. All right, well, our next article, Derek, is called Epistemology at the Gemba, and it was written by Harish Jose, and it appeared in Monday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. You can see it right there.
Hopefully you're going to tell me what epistemology means.
I am going to. Well, Harish actually explained what epistemology is, and it can be considered as the science or maybe the philosophy. I kind of look at these both ways. Okay. The science philosophy of knowledge. As Jose writes, epistemology asks, quote, how do we know things and what are the limits of our knowledge? It's kind of the knowledge of knowledge. Okay. It's the information about information. It's the study of knowledge. Jose offers in this piece a fascinating and detailed, albeit brief, history of Western philosophic inquiry, which necessarily dwells in the realm of epistemology. From Plato to David Hume to Stephen Pepper, rationalism to empiricism to logical positivism and interpretivism, right? Jose covers a few centuries of thought in just a few paragraphs. I love this stuff. I mean, the historical scope of this. Yeah. I mean, he really did a great job. Yeah. I mean, he went through in like a couple hundred words. Yeah. He went through a couple hundred centuries of thought, of Western thought, about thought. Yeah. It's really interesting article. And because of who he is and who we are and what we're publishing, he brings it back, of course, to lean, of course. And through some of the examples, he shows how the Toyota production system, as well as Toyota's production system, he kind of says there's a distinction there between those two things. He shows how that was affected by epistemology. And the application to the Gemba is really natural, if you think about it. I mean, after all, the entirety of lean thinking is really an exercise in challenging common wisdom or current understanding. Once you can explore how and why you believe what you believe, you can really a lot more easily incorporate different ways of thinking, and maybe superior ways of thinking too, not just different ways, but maybe better ways of thinking too. Lean tools that benefit from empirical epistemology, and there's several of them, and some of these Jose mentions in his article. Some of them kind of came to me as he was writing this. And this one, of course, he talks about, because it's right in the title, the Gemba Walk. There's a quote that he uses from Toyota: look with your feet and think with your hands. That was great, right? I mean, that's really what the Gemba Walk is all about. You walk around, those that are working really are learning as they're doing, which is an empirical way of learning things. But you're observing. You're able to, as a manager, go around and see what's happening and begin to have this understanding of what your process really is. So the Gemba Walk is really important. The Ono Circle is another one. I mean, that's really the power of pure observation. Sure. It kind of goes along with the Gemba Walk, and we all know the Ono Circle, where Ono would draw the circle and make his young manager stand in it for hours, and without any food or water.
No bathroom break for you.
Break, nothing. But that's really the power of pure observation. I mean, if you stand in that Ono Circle for a couple hours, really, and you watch the process and you really watch it, you're going to see a lot of things. Sure. You're going to really understand why things are done the way they are, maybe why things shouldn't be done the way they are. So that's really valuable too. The next one is the 5 whys. And we're talking about empiricism, but rationalism has this place too. Rationalism, which is really more that pure thought, knowing things through you thinking of them yourself rather than experiencing them. But rationalism has its place here because the 5 whys really is this thing where you're questioning. You have 2 brains, or maybe more than 2 brains, interacting with one another and saying, well, why is this happening? Why?
Right.
Why? You're finding the root causes. That's really valuable too. And then 5S, or really any lean tool. You can put any lean tool there. 5S is a good one. Because really before you implement the tool, you need to know why you're doing that implementation and what you're seeking to learn or improve from the implementation. If you just do it, it's dirty, let's 5S it. I mean, you're not getting to the heart of why you're really doing it. So that's really an opportunity to learn too. I mean, ultimately to me, epistemology comes down to the old 4 quadrants of knowledge. We always talk about these things. And really in order from, I look at these as dangerous to not so dangerous in the way I think about these. I mean, the 4 quadrants, the first one really is the not knowing what you don't know. And that, of course, to me is the most dangerous because, you're just cruising along. You may think everything is great, but there's gotchas out there that you don't even know about.
Or aware of,
So you can't even take any action to even change them. So, you need to take an empirical or a rational approach to maybe trying to find those things out. Then maybe you go to the not knowing what you know, which is less dangerous because, I mean, you know things, but you don't realize you know them, which is a problem. But generally speaking, if you trip over and you say, well, actually, I did know how to do that, that's not so bad. Then you get into the knowing what you don't know. That's really a powerful place to be. If you know what you don't know, you can say, all right, let's take the opportunity to address these, so learn about these things and figure out what they're going to be and how we can improve. And then finally, there's a knowing what you know, which is the safest place to be. It's a place of safety, but it also may be a place of stagnation. I mean, when you stay in what you know and you don't explore beyond that. So to me, knowing what you don't know is really the place maybe where you want to be more than anywhere else in that 4 quadrants. And how you move through those quadrants and how you move into kind of a higher place of knowledge really is the goal of epistemology at the Gemba. And it's not just at the Gemba, we have a couple minutes, but I mean, it's also in our personal lives too. I mean, if you're going to be a person that wants to fully engage in the world and learn things and be able to be better at what you do or just have different experiences, you have to have kind of a process in place to learn, to bring knowledge in and to actually use it. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck, like I say, in the you know what you know, and you just never get beyond that.
I mean, oddly enough, it comes down a lot to asking questions. Asking questions will help you understand, will move you through a couple of those steps anyway. It'll help you get to the point where you know what you don't know. Because you may ask a question, somebody may introduce a topic, and you may go, or a technology or an anything, and you would go, well, I didn't know such a thing existed, or tell me more about that.
If you can listen.
If you can listen.
That was what your Dirk wrote a great article this week, by the way, about this very topic. If you can properly listen and bring that in. That's an important part of that too, is being able to interact.
Well, I think, all of these kind of touch on that, listening in some form or another, whether you're listening to another person talk, listening to the process, which is going to the Gemba. The Ono circle is about listening, but listening visually. All of these, if you get right down to them.
Listening with your eyes. That's good.
Listening with your eyes, exactly. Really, it's funny, it just dawned on me, but if you think about it, almost all of this, almost all learning comes down to listening on some level. Like you said, whether it's listening with your eyes or listening by touch, basically using your senses to bring stuff into your mind that you otherwise wouldn't have known. And that can involve everything. Seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, it all goes into
all
there.
the senses, It's exactly right.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
great.
cool.
Harry shows is really terrific.
He's a good writer.
Really, really good stuff. All right, we're going to move on. We have a really good tech corner for you now.
Speaking of learning,
from our old friends at Q Skills. These are folks we worked with for a few decades now. Really, really good friends of ours in Quality Digest. So Dirk, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. That's right. The product we're going to talk about today is Q Skills 3D, which is a fun, interactive software program, a training program that helps you learn or refresh on quality skills, quality techniques, quality concepts. Now, Q Skills itself has been around, the original version has been around for a long time. It's been around for 20 years. We met the developer, Anthony Burns, gosh, back in the 80s when Q Skills first came out. It's sold over 500,000, 500,000 copies of Q Skills have gone into corporate brands. Pretty much any corporate brand you can think of, they have purchased Q Skills, always with really good reviews. Now, Q Skills 3D is a completely revamped Q Skills that incorporates the latest 3D gaming engine within it in order to bring you really nice graphics, really fun interactivity, nice simulations and visualizations of concepts. It works really well. The other thing about it is that you can log into it. So you might start off, let's say, going to work and bring up Q Skills on your Android. And when you get to work, transfer over to your computer, pick right up from where you left off and continue on with your lesson. Of course, because you're logged in, all of your coursework can be tracked, either by you or maybe a training coordinator. And what makes all of this work really well is, like I said, is the fun interactivity. You're learning concepts, and let's face it, a lot of quality concepts are just pretty darn dry, and nothing's drier than looking at a PowerPoint and have somebody drone on about this text that you're seeing on the screen, right? These are all game-oriented, simulation-oriented, a lot of fun to participate in and really help lock these concepts into your noggin. So we're going to take a look at a demo that Q Skills sent us. We take a look at our screen share here. And you can see that on the left, these are kind of the main topics. We've got lean, flow. Within flow, let's say we've got process mapping, we've got examples. Under lean, we have 8 wastes and 5S. We've got cause and effect, run and bar charts, scattergrams, histograms. Notice at the end of each of these, there is a summary that kind of wrap everything up, and also there is a quiz that kind of brings everything home. And of course, at the very end of all the coursework is a mastery test. So let's take a look at what a couple of these things look like. So we're going to go into 8 wastes. Now I'm going to show you a simulation here. Now on the simulation, you're watching it over a screen share. It may not look as smooth as what I'm seeing. That's just kind of the limitations of how we do screen shares here. But the first thing you would see is one of the very few bits of text that you will actually find, and this is simply a recap of what the 8 wastes are. You know, we can see our transport and inventory, what we got: motion, waiting, overproduction, overprocessing, defectives, and so forth. But if we go on to the next bit, what we're going to see here is kind of a Rube Goldberg kind of machine. On the left-hand side, it's cranking out rubber duckies. You can see there's a character who picks it up and he runs it down one side and up the other, and you know, he comes back. And you can see all sorts of stuff going on here. And the goal here is to try to understand and pick out the 7 wastes that are in here. And if you look at this closely, you can probably see quite a few of them. Now, if you can't pick out what the 7 wastes are, you can click that Show Me, and now it comes up and it shows you what those wastes are right there on the screen. Whether it's waiting or motion or transport or what have you, you can pick up what all those are just by looking at the screen. Now, if we exit this, we can go back to our menu. Let's look at a game. So we're going to go over to histograms, and we're going to look at this. This is the quality version of a first-person shooter game, and we're going to get into this here. Here we go. And this is, imagine that you are the captain of a Navy ship, a British Navy ship on the rolling seas, and you have control over the cannon here, but your ship is tossing up and down, and the pirate ship there on the horizon is tossing up and down. And what I've got to do is try to shoot cannonballs and hit that ship. So I'm going to sit here and fire 7 shots. And as I'm firing, notice that on the left-hand side, you see a little bar. In the middle of that bar is a red line. That represents my target. That represents the pirate ship out there. And the X's are where my cannonballs are landing, which, as you can see, are landing nowhere near the pirate ship that I'm going to hit. So probably if I don't improve my aim, I'm going to be boarded and all my booty is going to be taken from me. So I'm going to take a couple more shots. One of these will hit if I'm lucky. Here's my 6th shot. Finally, here is my 7th shot. And the ship is still standing, unfortunately. But now what I see is a histogram. So notice on the histogram, what do we see? Well, we see 1 bar that represents all my shots that landed way in the distance, and another bar that shows my shots that landed close by. If I grouped them a little bit better, I may have seen a histogram that looks similar to what you see on the right. Now notice there's a question that comes up here. What would you expect your histogram to look like with better quality results? Now if I click on the wrong answer, it simply tells me no. But I know that if I was really a good shot and was doing a much better job aiming that cannon, that I would expect my histogram to be narrower and taller like we see there on the right. And of course it would tell me that's correct. I can replay this game, and then it would show me another histogram. It would overlay that histogram on my previous one to show how I improved. And it has even more questions related to histograms. So I'm learning about histograms as I'm playing a fun interactive game. Now, as I said, once you get to the end of all of this, you can take a mastery test, which is everything that is covered in Q skills. And this is a game of snakes and ladders. And basically the way this works is it asks you a question. If you answer correctly, you get to roll the dice and you move along the board. If you don't answer correctly, a snake comes up and bites you in the rear. So for instance, the first question, before improving a process, first remove variation. Well, we know that's true. So we're going to click on, oh, I was wrong. I was wrong, Mike. So a snake came out and bit me in the rear end. Flowcharts are mainly used in manufacturing processes. Well, that's not true. They can be used all other places, I think, so I'm going to answer false. Hey, I got one right. There we go. It rolls the die, and I move along the board 3 spaces. So you get the idea. You keep asking questions. If you answer incorrectly, you may be moved backward. If you answer correctly, you'll be moved forward, and you work your way through the game until you get the end and finish it. So that's really all there is. I mean, this is really just a fun way to interact with these lessons, with these concepts, and kind of bring home the idea of what all these things are talking about without reading some boring PowerPoint, right? And that's the whole goal behind Q skills, is to make these ideas available to anybody at any time. So if you want more information on Q skills, there's 3 links underneath the player page. The first one is going to take you out to a landing page on their website, which kind of describes this in more detail. It also has another 3D simulation of a histogram, kind of a different one. There's a link that goes out to a demo version that you could download, similar to what I was just showing you here. And there's also a link to a really interesting article written by Anthony for us 2 or 3 months ago that kind of gives his background, where he's coming from. We've known Anthony for 20 years, but his history goes way back. He's an Aussie. He came up through the early days of some manufacturing processes there in Australia. And he gives you an idea of why he's so passionate about bringing quality to the shop floor and making it available to the everyday man. So I suggest you read that article. It's really good. And again, thanks to Tony Burns for sending us the software to take a look at. I suggest you go out there and take some more look at it yourself. Okay, Mike, back to you.
Well, there you go, Dirk. Yes, that's Q Skills from our good friends Q Skills. Tony Burns, of course, one of our buddies. Tony comments on a lot of articles that we publish.
Tony's got some very strong opinions on things.
He does.
Ask Tony what he thinks about Six Sigma.
That's right.
Ask Tony what he thinks about Six Sigma.
And he will tell you.
And he will tell you.
That's right. So thanks, Tony and the team at Q Skills, for sending us that great. Good job, Dirk, on that demo. Really, really fun.
Fun stuff.
All right, well, that's our show for today. But before we go, we want to remind you we have a webinar coming up next week, sponsored by Verse Solutions, titled Building Effective Document Control in an ISO 9001-2015 Quality Management System. And the webinar, of course, happens on Tuesday, November 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Tim Lozier, who we spoke with earlier in the show, we appreciate Tim coming on. He's going to be your presenter, and my buddy right over here, Dirk Ducharme, is going to be your host. So keep an eye on your email inbox for your invitation, as always. And that is our show. Thanks all for joining us. Thanks again, Tim Lozier, for being on the show with us, and Tony Burns and the guys at Q Skills for giving us that great software to look at. And we'll see you next week. We'll be back at you with another great week of Quality Digest and QDL here next Friday.
So long.
See ya.